Okay, sorry about
Hey,
that.
yeah, you just froze up.
Sorry about that. The internet crashed on me. But
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Abayomi, your response to all that's going on in Latin America and the very intense polarizing debates that's happening amongst our many comrades on what's going on.
Yeah, I don't believe that Alex Saab would have been extradited if the destabilization efforts that are going on had not taken place. If the president, the rightful president, and first lady had not been kidnapped illegally, and the other uh, pressure that's being put on them, they're still carrying out the targeted assassinations of people in boats. So yes, I don't believe it would have happened if this pressure campaign had not been leveled against Venezuela. We have to take all these things into consideration.
And mobilize our efforts against Western imperialism, and not think that if Mexico pivots hard to the right tomorrow, if there is if you have a Keiko Fujimori or the remnants of all of these far right goons, much of them backed by Western imperialists. So our focus should be on, again, mostly, criticizing Western imperialism and mobilizing against Western imperialism while, still having, whatever legitimate criticisms we can make of this government or that government. But in the end of the day, Western imperialism is the root of all evil. And Yeah, well, I'm about to ask you a question about Lebanon and Palestine, but that's also the same thing with Palestine. So the PLO, the PLO Fatah is a colonial viceroy to the Zionist entity and the Western-backed proxy, that is Israel. But still, the root of all evil, though, to that is the occupation, the settler colonial project that is Israel. Correct?
Yeah, but I wouldn't throw the Palestinian Liberation Organization all into one basket.
Okay.
And they're affiliates of the PLO, whether they still are or whether they were affiliates in the past, like the DFLP and the PFLP, whose forces fought alongside the resistance in Gaza. So it was approximately 9, possibly 10 resistance groups that have been involved in the Al-Aqsa flood in the Gaza region. And people are still resisting as well in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. In fact, the Zionists have stepped up their repressive tactics in the West Bank, stealing more land, homes, harassing and killing Palestinians. And that's the vigilantes as well as representatives of the state apparatus. So, yes, the real enemy, of course, is U.S. imperialism, which backs Zionism. They were trying to make it appear as if there was some argument going on between Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of the Zionist entity, and Donald Trump, who is the MAGA president of the United States. But I don't believe it's that big of an argument. It may be disagreements on tactics, but they carried out, both of them, this unjust war against Iran. The U.S. is supplying weapons to the state of Israel to carry out the carnage and the destruction that's going on in southern Lebanon. So, yes, they are the real enemies. And if these groups collapse, that is the state of Israel and the U.S., there would be unity and development throughout West Asia. But they are the stranglehold that's been placed on that region of the world now for almost 80 years. So we always have to keep that in mind.
Uh,
And they don't want to give up because the Iranians gave them a defeat. They maintain their own state. They're still united. So yes, they don't want to give up, but they want to continue to fight. But even elements within their own camp, the MAGA camp here in the U.S., are really starting to question this strategy, this military strategy that the Trump administration has carried out. But will they be able to do anything? And do they have the political will to oppose Trump? Because his policies are driving more and more people into poverty and destitution in the United States. You can go, I'm sure, even in New York, and see lots of people sleeping on the streets and lots of people living in homeless shelters right now, even though the stock market, they claim, is going through the roof.
Exactly. And going back and I have a question about Iran, which I'll ask in a minute. But so my follow up question is this then, which is, what's your assessment of Israel's ongoing mass murder of Lebanon, trying to reoccupy and ethnically cleanse southern Lebanon? And Israel has vowed, they have said it themselves, that they will murder anyone they deem as harboring Hezbollah fighters, Hamas fighters. And Rania Khalek, the brilliant Rania Khalek, who's been a guest on the show of Breakthrough News and Unauthorized Disclosure, she has expressed outrage that the pathetic Lebanese state, though not Hezbollah's political wing, I believe also the future movements of the Harari Nepo Baby and even Kateb, the Christian far-right political party, is not consenting to what she calls the ultimate humiliating surrender of Lebanese sovereignty to Israel and its great evil Greater Israel project. What's your response to that? Because the Lebanese state, the current Lebanese state, which is a puppet of the West, the Gulf states, and arguably Israel itself, has basically said that Israel can continue to ethnically cleanse southern Lebanon and occupy it in its war against Hezbollah and whatnot.
Yeah, that's why the resistance has rejected outright these negotiated settlement between the so-called Lebanese government and the state of Israel that's being brokered by U.S. imperialism. So they're going to continue to fight, and they're going to continue to resist this incursion into southern Lebanon, and that is their position. And I believe the majority of the people in Lebanon supports the position of the resistance. And they want to make sure that there's a buffer zone between the Arab and Muslim masses in that region and the state of Israel. That's their main objective, is to protect the state of Israel, because it is what they consider to be an unsinkable aircraft carrier in West Asia. That's how they view it. If the state of Israel collapses or is overthrown, it would upend the imperialist project in that part of the world, because no one else would be as reliable as they have been over the last 78 years.
Exactly. And any news on how your colleagues and comrades in Iran are doing, the Islamic Republic of Iran, those who work at Press TV? And what can you tell us about ongoing peace negotiations between Iran and the U.S., which Israel itself wants to sabotage? Israeli officials and their junk journalists and propagandists in Israeli media, they believe that Donald Trump is being a chump for Iran and not, for not going all the way in and destroying and eradicating the Islamic Republic. And you talked about how some on the MAGA cult movements are opposed to U.S. Israeli Western aggression in Iran. And interestingly enough, Tucker Carlson, the far-right journalist, has expressed that he's not going to be supporting the Republican Party, whether it's Trump or someone else. And he says it's largely to do with their policies on Israel and the war of aggression on Iran. Tucker Carlson has been using his platform a lot, speaking out on Israel and its eradication of Palestine Christians, Lebanese Christians. So it seems as if the Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan in him is coming out.
Yeah.
What's your response?
Yeah, there are fractures in the MAGA movement. And you could see it during the period of the debates over the Epstein files, releasing the Epstein files. Now, a lot of the Epstein files were released, but a lot of them were redacted. Large sections were redacted. And they started a war, of course, against Iran to take the Epstein files controversy off the front pages of the Western media. And it wasn't just confined to the United States. We saw what happened among the elites in the UK. Lord Peter Mendelsohn who was exposed in terms of his links with Jeffrey Epstein and Epstein's organization. And that, of course, damaged Sir Keir Starmer, who's announced his resignation will be coming up. He'll probably be out within the next 2 weeks, if not sooner.
Yeah.
So it's been very damaging to both the UK as well as the United States. So this war that Trump has carried out illegally and unprovoked, in part was designed to take away from the headlines related to the Epstein files, and also to try to build back or bring back elements within the MAGA movement. But they were also opposed, many of them, to what is going on in West Asia. They do not believe that the war was necessary, and that it was ill-advised, and the fact that so much money has been spent and none of the objectives of U.S. imperialism have been achieved in the war. We're talking about over 4 months now that this has been going on. I believe that when the primaries results come up next month, and when the midterm elections actually take place in November, we'll see the extent to which the MAGA movement has been fractured, and we'll see to what extent this is going to impact the future governance of the administration. Now, we know they are big on declaring emergencies. They're big in claiming theft. They're doing this all over the country. So they'll probably be screaming if they lose that the elections were stolen. They're already framing people around the country. In Minneapolis, there's 15 people that have been indicted by the federal government, ostensibly involving some conspiracy to prevent law enforcement officers from carrying out their jobs. Well, their jobs resulted in numerous beatings, gassings, the deaths of at least 2 civilians who had no immigration issues in Minneapolis. And we've also seen more and more people being detained in these concentration camps that are being set up around the United States. So all of this is going on. So people are not happy about that either. So we'll see. They can come up with another state of emergency in some other city to justify perhaps the seizure of ballot boxes, to justify the indictment and incarceration of election officials. So we don't know what scheme they're going to come up with over the next several months in an attempt to extend their control of the repressive apparatus of the American state.
Some people on the left, I think sometimes overpraise the kind of libertarian wing of MAGA republicanism and so forth, and there still are some who believe in a left-right alliance and playing footsie with the far right in advancing Palestinian liberation, in advancing anti-imperialism. We're in the month of Pride, and there are some who do think that we should be throwing transgender people, intersex people, non-binary people under the bus. Too much wokeism going on, and we should ally ourselves with the far right in order to stop crony capitalism and so forth. I completely disagree with that approach. But let's say that there is a faction of the far right, the libertarians, who are anti-imperialist, and they do not want these forever wars. These wars, which actually are counterproductive for capitalism and so forth. Should we not be betting on them to grow a conscience and to keep their their far right brethren in line, that we need to really double our efforts in advancing the left, educating people, political left education, in order to advance a movement in which, it's all great that, the Ron Pauls of the world are, anti-imperialist, but a lot of them also are selectively anti-war. And again, we should be, doubling our efforts in in growing the left, because you cannot have anti-imperialism without being anti-capitalist. And a lot of times libertarians, for all their talk of being fiscally conservative but socially liberal, protecting civil liberties and against big bad evil tyrannical governments, oftentimes they always default in just yeah, Elon Musk can ban me from Facebook, or Mark Zuckerberg can ban me from X. I know that's the other way around. And
Same difference, same difference.
yeah, but yeah, so I'm curious your response on that.
No, I don't believe that the libertarian movement in this country is anti-imperialist. I do believe some of them have differences with the Trump administration, but I saw they had a literature table back in September at a festival that's held every year, a street festival in the Midtown area in Detroit. And I asked them, I said, well, what is your position on what Trump is doing? This was in September of 2025. They claim they were opposed to it, but I don't see them out in the streets organizing or doing anything against the camps that are being set up all over the United States, these, in essence, concentration camps where they are abducting people who are in the country legally, who have court dates set up, who have appointments with the Immigration and Naturalization Services set up. They're living legally inside the United States, even though they may not have permanent residency or naturalized citizenship. But people in those same neighborhoods who do have those documents are also being terrorized by the state agents. So no, I don't believe they're strong enough, and I don't really believe they're against wars internationally, not on a categorical level. They like to pick and choose which wars to oppose, but categorically, no. They won't. They will not come out and say U.S. imperialism is the major threat to world peace in the world today. I've never heard a libertarian make that statement.
Yeah, and you were talking about ICE, which has lost its mother effing mind in how in their aggressivity and supporting people, even people who are documented folks and so forth. And what people also don't realize is this. Now, you can say things like, well, if you're an American citizen, all you got to do is show your passport. But there are vast majorities of Americans that do not have a passport. That all they have is just their driving's license and maybe their and maybe their birth certificates. And you have these people who are being swept up in ICE's hunting season and so forth. And I saw a report on DW that said that Native Americans, Indigenous Americans who live in reservations and so forth, are being swept up by ICE and being deported to places like
You're frozen?
Guatemala. Oh, can you still hear? Can you still hear me,
Yeah,
Abayomi?
you're back now. Yeah,
Okay,
you're good now. Yeah.
yeah, there are Native Americans who from
Yes.
reservations who are being deported to places like Guatemala and whatnot because of the sound of their names, because of the fact that a lot of, there's a connection between Mexico, half the country stolen from the stolen from the U.S., and then the ongoing subjugation of Native Americans. So you have Native Americans being deported to countries they've never been to, and I believe I believe you once joked with me that you yourself could find yourself deported given your name, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk
Even
about
though
that.
I can trace my ancestry back, 5 generations in the United States. That's why I have a U.S. passport, not just to travel, but also if I have to pull it out, if I get pulled over by ICE or Custom and Border Patrols. But yes, but I would venture to say, in regard to Mexico, that the majority of people there have indigenous heritage.
Yeah,
They proclaim Mexico as their nationality. But if you look at it, they are, of course, indigenous people from that part of the Americas. So you have indigenous people from all the way up Canada, all the way down through the United States, into Mexico, Central America, South America. Look at Peru, Colombia. So even Venezuela, they have indigenous communities there as well. So no, these lines were drawn by the imperialists for their own interests, and we really needs to be a rethinking of who's Latino, who's Latinx, all of these questions. And some people have rejected those labels.
Yeah.
They have, saying that no, we're not of Spanish heritage. There are a lot of people who are, but the culture is not necessarily completely Spanish. You have to recognize the African as well as the indigenous culture in all those societies, from Mexico all the way down to the southern hemisphere of South America.
And can you give us any updates on how your colleagues and comrades in Iran are doing, those who work at Press TV, and anything else you can tell us about the ongoing peace negotiations between Iran and the U.S., which Israel is trying to sabotage?
Press TV is still going. They haven't broken coverage. They haven't had a pause in coverage, and they're doing an excellent job, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right now, they're covering the funeral services for the Ayatollah Saeed Khamenei. So yes, they're doing great. And the negotiations right now are paused, largely because of the celebrations surrounding the 250th anniversary of imperialism in this country, and also because of the funeral that's going on for the supreme leader in the Islamic Republic of Iran. But a broader issue, of course, is the failure of the United States to accept their defeat at the hands of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They know they were defeated, but they're trying to maneuver to grab some form of victory from the jaws of defeat. And this is why he keeps saying that, oh, we'll turn around and we'll bomb them again. And they did carry out some operations last week, which Iran retaliated. So the situation remains highly unstable right now in the West Asia region. And I don't believe that Trump is going to go away without a fight. He has elements within his own party who are angry because the war was started. And now with reports coming out saying that they have to pay reparations to the Iranian people, unfreeze assets which they've held for decades, and also back off their threats to, quote, annihilate the entire civilization. This is what Trump said on April 7th, that the civilization was going to die, never to return again. And just several hours later, he agreed to a ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire. And then, of course, they negotiated a memorandum of understanding, which is being violated every day because Lebanon was part and parcel of that agreement.
Yeah.
So, this is their problem. This is their war. And they just need to resolve it other than suffer further defeats in the region.
And now I didn't get the chance to watch this, but there's been some critical coverage of Iran and their tactics and their position when it comes to negotiating with the U.S. There's this new left-wing, very anti-imperialist outlet called Bet Media. Our good friend Dimitri Lascaris has been on their program many times, and apparently they were expressing criticisms of Iran for how they're negotiating with the U.S. And I think if I catch them correctly, they think Iran should be much more aggressive and not just automatically surrender or have a peace deal with the United States. I'm very curious your response to that.
Well, that's good for them to say. Where are they located? Are they in Iran? Are they in the region? They're going to fight to your last soldier. It's people, who are like that and been like that for decades. Even during the Vietnam War, they were criticizing the North Vietnamese government and the Viet Cong for negotiating during the Paris peace talks. So, it's absurd, in my opinion.
Okay, good response. And if Bet Media or Dimitri Lascaris would like to respond, they are free. They are free to come back,
Yeah,
on the program and have their right of response.
of course.
Now, let me ask you this question. Uh, this is very sad. The most journalists from all outlets, corporates, independent journalism, international publications, domestic West Asian ones, all Palestinian journalists who work for these outlets and their own domestic Palestinian outlets are being murdered by Israel. This could very well be, the mass murder genocide that's happening in Gaza and elsewhere in historic Palestine, in Lebanon, even in Syria, where journalists are being murdered, as well as hospital aid workers. This is the most. This war that Israel is doing, the most, journalists and hospital workers and aid workers being murdered, and yet the Western semi NGO, the Committee to Protect Journalists, is now going to exclude Palestinian journalists being murdered by Israel. Can you talk about this and their sickening rationale?
Well, that makes no sense at all. You're denying what is right before people's eyes, what they've seen, what they've heard, firsthand and secondhand, and definitely there is a conspiracy to wipe out journalists in Gaza and in other parts of Palestine and other parts of the West Asia region because they do not want the truth to come out. The similar situation happened in regard to Syria. A lot of journalists were killed there when the U.S. backed a counter-revolutionary coup against the government of President Bashar al-Assad. That the government fell approximately a year and a half ago. And yes, so they have a consistent policy of eliminating journalists who are telling the truth, who are using objective methodology to convey the genocide that's going on in the region. So they've also attacked journalists with independent media such as Electronic Intifada. Uh, Journalists have had their devices confiscated. Ali Abunimah was arrested in Sweden, I believe it was, Switzerland.
Switzerland,
Yeah,
neutral.
unjustly. Just he was invited there to give a speech. He was detained for the weekend there for no reason whatsoever. So it's happening both outside of the region as well as inside the region. But they are systematically targeting and killing journalists. Al Jazeera's had their journalists killed. Al Mahadin and many others have lost journalists because they do not want independent reporting from that region. And it was interesting when the Al Aqsa flood first started, they were saying that, oh, the Israeli government does not allow independent reporting in Gaza. Well, Press TV broadcast all through that period. So did Al Mahadin and others. So you can't say that there are no journalists that are covering what's going on in Palestine. There are journalists, and it's being streamed 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Yet they ignore that and want to go through the Israeli censors. And all the information is being conveyed, like the BBC, for example, Sky News, CNN. All these people are abiding by the censorship that's being imposed by Tel Aviv.
It's crazy, and all I can say is our heart goes out to all of those truth tellers and mythbusters who were murdered by Israel and by its proxies. And Western corporate media and Western state media has a lot to answer for in throwing their own Palestinian journalist colleagues under the bus. And there's not enough middle fingers I can stick to the Committee to Protect Journalists. It's discredit to itself, but also, not surprised. Julian Assange recently just turned 55. Happy birthday to that wonderful truth teller, and you know he exposed what he exposed through his publications Reuters journalists being murdered by U.S. Servicemen, and he got and in response for that, all of the editorials from the New York Times to BBC to the Guardian to the Washington Post, Globe and Mail, all more or less threw Julian Assange under the bus while the U.S. was trying to arrest him and was going to basically torture him to death like they did with Chelsea Manning, who was pardoned by the Obama administration, but of course it was the Obama administration that put Manning in that hellhole where she attempted suicide twice and subjected Julian Assange to systemic torture, arbitrary detention, so forth like that. So, one shouldn't be too surprised that some stupid waste of space, semi NGO, Western NGO like the Committee to Protect Journalists is basically saying that that there is no such thing as Palestinian journalists being, murdered left, right, and center by Israel, and de facto the West, who's arming Israel to the teeth. Your response on that before I ask my second to
Well,
last
they should just
question.
watch Press TV, Al Mahadin, Al Jazeera, even because some of their journalists have been killed as well. So they're saying all these news outlets are lying. Give me a break. And even one of the leading journalists here in this country, Mumia Abu-Jamal, they've never really recognized him as a political prisoner, as a prisoner of conscience. And if it wasn't for a movement in this country and internationally, he would have been executed years ago by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And even now, he's suffering from profound health conditions that could easily be resolved by allowing for expert medical attention and also releasing him on compassionate grounds. I mean, he's been locked up now for nearly 45 years since December of 1981. It'll be 45 years in December.
You know,
And he's suffered from diabetes, heart problems, eye problems. He had a hepatitis C, and they were denying him medication. If it wasn't for the movement raising these issues consistently, he would have left us years ago. So those groups that supposedly are designed to protect journalists, they pick and choose which journalists they want to protect. But you cannot ignore the plight of the Palestinians, the Iranians, the Lebanese. None of those issues can be ignored, and unless you consider, if you really want to consider yourself legitimate.
you know, actually educate us on Mumia Abu Jamal. Actually, that's going to be my second to last question before I get to my last question. But actually, talk to us about Mumia Abu Jamal, because I think even I think some of even the best of the white left and white socialists who do follow the work of Black Agenda Report, Pan African Newswire, Black Liberation Media, Black Power Media. A lot of times a lot of times, despite the occasional Democracy Now coverage, there's not much coverage going on of Mumia Abu Jamal. So for those who do not know anything about Mumia Abu Jamal, talk to us about him and why folks should be involved in the solidarity efforts to release him.
Well, if people want to keep up with his writings and commentaries, they could go to Prison Radio, prisonradio.org. And they have all kinds, not just on his situation, but others who are incarcerated inside the United States, which totals well over 2 million people. Mumia Abu Jamal was a member of a co-founder, actually, of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia. Even prior to that, he was an activist fighting against racism in Philadelphia as a teenager. And he was, of course, arrested in 1981 and charged with the murder of a Philadelphia police officer. And he's been detained since that time period. He was railroaded through the courts without adequate legal representation. Many post-conviction relief appeals that have been filed. They were able to take him off death row, which was a victory, because they wanted to execute him in 1995. The governor of the state at that time wanted to execute him twice but that was defeated. In 1999, there was also an attempt to execute him. And then he was eventually taken off death row around during the 2000s. But he should be released. You know, he's been in prison for 45 years. They've never definitively proved that he was involved in the systematic and targeted assassination of this police officer. So he should be released. But he continues to write, he continues to do commentaries, and he continues to express solidarity with the Palestinians, with the struggles of the masses of people that are taking place around the world. He was a strong supporter of the MOVE organization, which was targeted by the state of Pennsylvania and the city of Philadelphia. Their members, 11 of them, were killed in 1985. And other things have happened subsequent over the decades. So yes, he should be released, and any legitimate journalist organization should, of course, support him. But that has not happened in regard to the Committee to Protect Journalists at all.
Or Amnesty International, or human rights fraud for that matter. And
Yeah, right,
now,
right.
if memory serves me well, uh, you mentioned he was basically like an independent journalist who covered the grotesque terrorist state terrorist attack that happened on the MOVE movement. No reason whatsoever for the Philadelphia government to have done what they've done to this community of black people and so forth. And Mumia covered that. Now, the official story was that Mumia's brother was involved in a brawl with a police officer. Mumia had always been targeted by the police for his journalism, for the fact that he was a Black Panther. And now, apparently, Mumia was trying to break up this fight between his brother and this cop. The cop was murdered. Mumia was accused of murdering this police officer, hence why he's been in jail, systematically tortured, was on death row, but the People Power movement, the Solidarity movements got him off death row. Now, how come his brother doesn't just say, "Look, I was a witness. Mumia did not kill this police officer"? Why is
Well,
that?
he did say that.
Oh,
He had said that. There was another guy who claimed that he actually carried out the shooting. And that testimony has been disregarded by the state, by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There was also other documents that were found several years ago that had, they say, had been lost, which also showed the systematic framing of Mumia Abu Jamal. This is exculpatory evidence, yet the district attorneys in that area, under political pressure by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the Fraternal Order of Police, have refused to grant him a new trial. So he could also be released on compassionate grounds. Someone his age, who I believe right now is 72 years old, who's suffering from numerous ailments, does not impose, does not threaten anyone having him released. So these are some of the issues that the United States still has to attest to internationally, even though they claim to be the bastion of democracy and free speech and fair play. Yet you have cases of people like Mumia and many other people who are locked up in the dungeons of the United States. People who are citizens, who are documented, and those who are not citizens and undocumented. So this is a huge prison nation, as Mumia Abu Jamal describes often during his commentaries that you can hear over prison radio.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And thanks for clarifying that. Because the reason why I asked that is I have seen multiple documentaries on Mumia Abu Jamal, some short, some long documentaries, but but they never answer that one question, which I always find a complete blank. Like why hasn't Mumia's brother just said he hasn't seen anything? But that being said,
well, they could grant him a new trial and they could subpoena his brother to testify and others. Those who were still living during that time period could be subpoenaed as witnesses. But they know they really don't have a case, so that's why they don't want to grant him a new trial.
Exactly. And would you say uh, this is my j'accuse to the U.S. government and the government of Philadelphia. My j'accuse is this, and it's the same regarding the controversy surrounding uh, you know, uh, Leonard Peltier. Is I
Yes,
think that is I think elements factions of the FBI and even the CIA, when we talk about COINTELPRO, I think they did an inside job and shot their own police officers and then framed Leonard Peltier. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to Mumia Abu Jamal. Uh, yeah, your response to that.
yeah. In regard to Mumia's case, there have been stories circulating about the police officer who was killed, killed, possibly being involved in criminal activities with organized crime, which is strong in the city of Philadelphia. But um, these things could be brought out in a new trial if this officer was involved, and this was a hit by other officers, and it was blamed on Mumia Abu Jamal because of his revolutionary background, being in the Black Panther Party, being a supporter of MOVE, being a journalist who covered the excesses of the police in the city of Philadelphia. Yeah, he has definitely been on their radar long before he was arrested, charged, found guilty, given the death penalty, and so forth. And they still hate him, even though he's been incarcerated now for over 44 years.
Yeah, there's some controversy. There's still some controversy. Apparently, there are folks in Canada who believe that Leonard Peltier and members of the American Indian movement were involved in the extrajudicial murder of some Native American First Nation Canadian women and so forth. Uh, I don't believe that. I think it's a stitch up in the frame up of the American Canadian deep state to discredit the American Indian movement. And we've seen stuff like this happen with the Black Panther Party. And I recently saw a documentary. I'm trying to organize an interview with a documentarian about how the FBI, well, this is about the RCMP, so the cops in Canada, and CSIS, Canada's version of the CIA, purposely grooming Muslims to do a terrorist attack, which they can later say, we got them, and so forth. And apparently, the RCMP and the Canadian Secret Services did that with Quebec separatist parties, infiltrated them to do terrorist attacks. But this is not these Quebec separatist groups. It was actually the police themselves doing that, and then saying, "Come on, Canadian state, oppress the Quebec independence movement," and so forth like that. And I believe that the my j'accuse is that the U.S. deep state, whether it's the FBI or CIA, has done the same with the American Indian movement and the Black Panther movement. So we always have to be very careful when people say such and such definitely did this crime against this person, when I think it was the infiltrators of the of the FBI and whatnot who did whatever crime such and such was accused of. Very curious your response to that.
Well, yes, all those movements are targeted for infiltration. Now, the Quebec liberation movement, going all the way back to 1965, was implemented in, quote, terrorist activities here in the United States with people in New York City. The so-called Statue of Liberty case, which involved a group called the Black Liberation Front, which a group that actually came out of the struggles that were taking place at that time. But that group had been infiltrated. There was a government agent who actually said that a woman from the Quebec Liberation Movement, and some revolutionaries in the United States had plans to blow up locations in the United States. This is as early as 1965, if you want to read up about that case. But the reality is that the Quebec Liberation Movement considered the Black Liberation Movement in the United States as allies. And even the Black Panther Party, for example, Bobby Seale visited Montreal in late 1968 for a conference on independence for Vietnam, which the US imperialists were occupying Vietnam at that time. And they recognized the National Liberation Front of Vietnam as the vanguard of the struggle there in exchange for the NLF recognizing the Black Panther Party as the vanguard of the revolutionary movement in the United States. But they also, worked closely with the FLQ, which was banned in 1970. So it's a lot of history there, and a lot of people are not aware of that history. Even people who are from the Quebec area, I've run into people, and their view on the Quebec independence movement is distorted.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with them in Canada. So we have to keep in mind the infiltration, but at the same time, the broader principles of Black liberation or African American liberation and Quebec liberation have been united for decades.
That is fascinating in and of itself. But that being said, the folks at the forefront of Quebec independence are not left wingers, and the Quebec Bloc and the Parti Québécois are very right wing. So have to put that out.
Things have changed over the decades, and I believe that it was always a left, a right, and a center of the movement, for the liberation of Quebec. But that still doesn't mean that the area is underdeveloped, that they've been subjected to national oppression, and should have a right to self-determination.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely agree with you on that. Last series of questions are this. The last thing I wanted your thoughts on this is, can you talk about the efforts to change the constitution in Senegal? Where do you stand on it? And who should Pan-Africanist leftists and those involved in Africa Solidarity should support on that? Because I know it's a very, very contentious issue right now in Senegal.
Yeah, it split the movement, the Pan-African movement in Senegal between President Faye and Sonko. And Sonko left the government, and they've been trying to lessen the authority of the president. I think it ties in with the direction of Senegal. He's a very young president. When he came in over 2 years ago, a lot of people felt that he would join the Alliance of Sahel States. That didn't happen. Or at least take a more independent, radical position towards France and the United States. But what happened was that when President Faye came in, I think the first country he visited internationally was France. So obviously he was trying to illustrate that there wouldn't be any real radical shift in relations between Senegal and Paris. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I think ultimately the people in Senegal will decide whether they want to embark on a more independent stance or whether to stand and remain within the orbit of Francophone, the whole Francophone situation in Africa, meaning that France still determines the direction of politics, both domestically and internationally, in their former colonies. And they've expanded that by having that summit, that French Africa summit in Kenya, which was not a former French colony, it was a British colony, but yet William Ruto, the president, welcomed Emmanuel Macron there. And I also believe that Ghana's president was also invited as well. John Mahama attended that summit. So these are two formerly British colonial states linking up with France. I think it's really not going to serve the interests of Kenya or Ghana, particularly at the time when Ghana is spearheading this call within the African Union as well as the United Nations for reparations for enslavement. They just had a big conference there about 3 weeks ago around the time of Juneteenth in the United States.
And
You
what's
have to be consistent in your policy.
exactly? And what's your response to apparently Congo is trying to bring Rwanda to the International Criminal Court? I want your response on that. And what is your response to the ongoing brutal civil war in North Sudan, which many largely blame on the UAE and Israel acting as proxies for the West to deliberately keep the brutal fighting ongoing because an unstable African country, an unstable African continent, is the best for Western multinational corporations, semi NGOs, and Western imperialism at large, including Gulf ones.
Yeah, I think that the Democratic Republic of Congo has a right to pursue a legal case against Rwanda. They have intervened on numerous occasions in the Eastern DRC. It is said that the M23 grouping is funded and coordinated by the state of Rwanda. So let's take it into court and see what comes about, what evidence is going to be presented on both sides. If Rwanda says it's an internal matter, they have nothing to do with it. And if the DRC, of course, is making a case that they are involved with in supporting M23 and other groups, then this should come out in a legal proceeding. But both governments, in my opinion, have a long ways to go in regard to reconciliation. They came to the United States at the aegis of the State Department and the White House, ostensibly to end their war. The destabilization is going on in Eastern DRC, and it is still going on. They still have not settled their differences. Now we have a new strain of Ebola virus disease, which has erupted in the Ituri province in the Eastern DRC that needs the full attention of both Rwanda as well as the Democratic Republic of Congo, along with the World Health Organization and the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. All these entities need to put their heads together, combine their resources to eliminate this pandemic that's taking place right now. So I think this is very, very important at this stage of the game.
Perfect response. Last thing I want to talk about is the following. So I was in New York. It was a great vacation. Might do a recording even about that because I would love to talk to you about my experiences in New York. But it was a great vacation. And it was a desperately needed vacation. And I thank my host James Dugan and his wife Lauren for hosting me. My friend James, his wife is from South Africa and she is from the colored community. And we had great conversations about South Africa. And she, more or less agreed with a lot of my critical assessments on South Africa. But you know what? All credits to that goes to John Pilger, you and your team at Black Agenda Report, Eve Engler, and so forth, and even Naomi Klein. If I have a very critical leftist perspective on the ANC, it is thanks to those men and rest in peace, God rest his soul, John Pilger. But she agreed with a lot of our critical assessments of South Africa and the ANC. She was very impressed with a lot of with a lot of my knowledge on South Africa, which I thank you for. And she was saying that that indeed it was largely armed struggle that really brought down South Africa, and South Africa being a Western proxy of the Anglo-American Canuck Empire and Israel, that that it was South Africa's constant meddling in Mozambique and Angola and Botswana and so forth, which finally brought the apartheid regime down. And she was saying regarding the colored community, because I regret how I characterized the colored community when we were talking about South Africa, and she was saying, but she was saying to me that the colored community was as marginalized as the largely Black Indigenous South Africans, and that the apartheid regime was trying to do a kind of divide and conquer racial hierarchy by buying off minorities within the colored community, those within the South Asian communities, to be collaborators with the apartheid regime. But she says that largely anyone who was not white suffered immensely under the apartheid regime, but that indeed those who were Black Indigenous South Africans, they got it the worst and so forth. And she says that largely white South Africa, uh they got lucky, and that they did not face the wrath of you know uh you know South Africa, Black South Africa, and others who suffered immensely under apartheid and so forth. And she says that, yeah, that indeed largely, you know, social racial apartheid is gone, but economic apartheid remains the same. And now the white South Africans are feeling that. And she was saying that inequality in South Africa is so grotesque that even though she would consider herself middle class, that in South Africa inequality is so grotesque that that there really is no middle class. It really is
Are you frozen?
lucky. Oh, okay. One moment, folks.
Are you still frozen?
Yes, I believe I'm still frozen.